10 to 15 minutes of qualifying and 7 laps or 13-minute long races. That is the perfect settings for your average jump-in public sim racing server. And in this video, I'm going to explain why those are the perfect settings, and I'm also going to complain about the complete lack of people setting up public servers with those settings.
The Lord of Darkness compels you to subscribe and forever regret your decision.
Now, before I continue, I will say, obviously, if you've paid for your own public server, it's totally fine to set it up however you want to set it up. And I totally get that some people just set up servers to practice for some kind of event or league or whatever they're doing, and some people just want to do hot lapping servers or whatever, or just test things out or play with their friends. I completely get that. I have to say this because otherwise someone will type that in the comments and go, "Oh, you're an idiot, gamer. I saw that people do what they do." I get that. But obviously, there's a lot of people that set up servers with the intention that they want people to jump in and just have fun racing, and with the intention that they want their server to actually be full so that people can enjoy racing on their server. So it's really bizarre that when you go into servers or games, most of the servers have absolutely ludicrous settings that quite frankly will not be conducive to good racing and will have people just leave them. It doesn't matter what the sim is, AC, ACC, Rfactor 2, Rfactor 1, Live for Speed, it doesn't matter. Most people set up servers absolutely terribly. The reason that 10-15 minute qualifying with a 7 lap or 30-minute or so race length is so good is that the reality is, let's say you have 20 people in a server, the reality is that you'll have 5 people that are really decent at driving, probably a second or so or within a second of track pace. You'll have a gaggle of cars, the majority of the people in the server that are sort of 2 to 3 seconds off pace, but all within their own little peloton chunk, and you'll have 5 or so people that, bless their hearts, are apparently driving using a dance mat and probably won't even do a few laps without crashing. We need those new people. It's good for them to be taking part, and public servers are actually a great place for them to actually get up to speed and learn to be consistent. But, you know, there will always be those terrible drivers. With that in mind, the fact is 13 minutes is enough time for the fast drivers and the mid-pack drivers to have, if they don't crash, really good, close racing, compacted racing, and help them develop racecraft and also have a little bit of backwards and forwards, and also put in a little bit of race strategy, assuming they don't crash. If they do have a very small accident, maybe like a little knockoff, a little off track and a rejoin, 13 minutes is enough time for them to be able to get back into the action, especially the mid-pack drivers, to not lose the pack. And also with the front drivers, they can still get back into it. Potentially anyone in that mid or front pack could still potentially win the race if they've got reasonable pace and they recover it, or maybe something else happens in the race. The slow drivers, well, they'll always crash anyway, but at least with the race length being 13 minutes, it's not going to be too long that they're not like, oh god, I'm not going to bother even continuing the race and just quit and find another server that's starting a race. So it's not intimidating amount of time for them to at least have the minimal challenge of just getting to the end of the race, rejoining, crashing, rejoining, doing some more dance mat moves, rejoining and getting to the end of the race. So it ends up being a really good length of race for those reasons. The reality is as well that if someone has a big crash and they like spin around and they're completely off the pack, you know, they're like 20-30 seconds for them to recover, the reality is, unless you had a race length that is 25-30 plus minutes, especially with cars that are like GT3 cars, the reality is you're not ever going to even catch up with the pack before the end of the race. So people will just insta-quit from the server. The big mistake that a lot of people making public servers make is they think, oh, a longer race will mean people will have more time to catch back up, or there'll be more length for closer racing. It just doesn't pan out. The more length also means that the faster drivers will just separate out. The grid will just separate out because people in a public server are not matched up like they would be on iRacing or the absolutely fantastic service low fuel motorsports, so anything with ranked splits. You'll just end up with a separated grid, which removes the point of someone being on a server as opposed to them just doing hot lapping. In fact, a longer race without matchmaking effectively just turns anything into a hot lap situation, which is obviously not the reason why you join a public server. If you're joining a public server, you're not using LFM, you're not using iRacing, you just want to jump in and have good, close racing, and ideally as competitive as possible within the limitations of mixed public server racing. This is controversial, but I definitely need to make a video on this separately to hammer home the point, but damage should be turned off on these sprint servers and public servers. There's this stupid meme in sim racing that damage makes people drive cleaner because they won't want to damage their car. It doesn't make any sense at all. First of all, damage in every simulator is normally really badly done, especially when you add in netcode and just the way that damage is completely random in driving simulators and never actually matches up to how damage operates with real cars. But then, even when damage actually is appropriately given out, the fact of the matter is, if a race is under an hour, say, you're out of the race from any contact. You're out of the race. You're not going to have enough. You're going to pit. Well, that's it. You're never going to catch back up with the field. But also, the fact of the matter is, people don't not crash due to damage. They don't crash because if you crash, you're not going to win the race. If you're knocked off the track or you make a mistake, you hit someone, you're already punished by the fact that you're not in the race anymore. You drop back. You've lost time to who's in front. That's the motivation. You don't need to add additional random punishment to that scenario that makes it harder for you to then be able to likely catch up with the pack and continue racing. People will just quit the server if they get any damage and reduce the number of people actually racing. Also, you'll find that good drivers are effectively always then just punished by the bad drivers, because you'll have one driver that misses a break point, hits a perfectly safely driving car, and the perfectly safely driving car has not only been knocked off the track, which they might recover from, but no, they've also had their race completely ruined and they've been taken out of the game due to damage. Turn damage off on public servers. And to be honest, for a lot of racing, unless it's, as I say, really a longer racing or it's a specific thing where you do want damage, you know, some kind of train simulator-esque type simulated race, damage is pretty much universally not a decent thing to have in sim racing, unfortunately, due to how it's implemented and everything else. I would guarantee if in real life they could turn damage off in motorsport, they probably would turn it off, because it's like, when it's really not a good thing, it's just annoying most of the time. Oh dear. So damage needs to be turned off on your server with your 10-minute to 15-minute qualifying and your 7-lap to 13-minute race, and by golly, by George, I'm talking old-fashioned, you will actually get much more enjoyable public server racing. And you know, you can go on all the sims now, and I guarantee you, if you look through those sims in terms of which servers are most popular, which are most active, they are servers that are close to that 10 to 15 minute qualifying, 13-minute race format, for the very good reason that it is the best way to set up a bog standard, general, jump in and drive, have fun racing public server. Now, if you want to experience this type of racing, you can also join me at 5 PM where we do these perfectly set up servers with the original Assetto Corsa. We also experiment with what I would call the super mega golden even better public server format. I didn't want to complicate this video too much going into it, but that is having the same length or so, maybe an extra lap, but also forcing a pit stop by forcing a setup with low fuel or forcing a tyre swap. Though that doesn't always work for your general public server, so I wouldn't say do every public server with that, but if you've got a well-moderated server, the forced single pit stop really adds things and makes it exciting. Also, I would say actually a really good way to set up servers with sims that support it is if you don't even have qualifying, you just have rolling races with the race result of the previous race gridding for the next race. But the pit stop and that rolling racing does require more moderation on the server, and ideally server automation tools for it to work. Live for Speed absolutely nailed that back in the day. Those of you that are old and digging a grave like me, you'll appreciate the air attack servers or the Fox servers in Live for Speed, which were they got it right. They got it right, and sim racing forgot. Unfortunately, it seems like a lot of people have forgotten what was actually done well in sim racing. The last 5 years we've kind of gone backwards a bit, but maybe that's just a symptom of me being old and having too much to compare things to. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know everyone's going to ignore it. I know servers are going to remain being terrible. I know sim racing is a lost cause, but here I am, and it's let's try and enjoy it as best possible. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for clicking the like button. Thank you for drinking tea. Bang your head against a concrete wall. Till the next one, take care. Goodbye.